Hi, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It is the 16th of December. Wow. 16th of January, 2026. And we are doing a Friday night show because we got a little bit busy yesterday. So if you can just hang on one second. Oh, my God. I just need to check one little thing here, and I will be in business. Nope, that's not going to do it. Nuts. Okay, never mind. Great, we'll just put that away for the time being. Okay, so anyway, our political show tonight. I have one thing that's just entertainment thing that I probably should save till Monday, but it's just on my mind. And strangely enough, when I went to YouTube just now to turn off the monetization on the YouTube stream, when I went to my homepage, I saw somebody beat me to it. Saw a trailer for Starfleet Academy 1987. It wasn't very good AI, but it was interesting. And I just now saw this. But I am, I don't know if anybody has actually seen the show. I do know that that when Paramount streamed it live on YouTube for free, they had 1,300 people watching, which is not overwhelming, you know. Not really. I just do that. Yeah, not really overwhelming, and that made me happy. Of course, I spend too much time thinking about these kind of things, so just let me just use this as a warm up, and we'll get into the questions. Random 1627. If you can hold that thought, that'd be great. Dave's Reels Area 51 says Bill's hair looked pissed. Well, Bill's hair had a rough day. Anyway, so they did the first episode of Starfleet Academy, and like I said, we'll keep this brief, and then we'll go to the questions. But Starfleet Academy is now a starship, and it looks like a brooch. It's got a little round disc, and then there's a little disc within the disc, and then there's little wings. And the wings are not attached to the fuselage because at this point in the future, why attach the engines to the ship? I mean, why would you think of doing that? In I guess it was Discovery, or the final season of Discovery, the geniuses at Starfleet, by which I mean the DEI hires at Starfleet, decided, hey, why go to all that trouble to add another, 7 feet of metal when we could set up tractor beams on both sides and just drag the ship along that way? That'd look cool, wouldn't it? And anyway, when I saw how bad that was, my original idea for the Starfleet Academy thing, and I'm just letting this out here just because I just thought it was fun to talk about, was to have Kirk show up and basically replace everybody at the academy. But what I discovered was this takes place like really kind of far in the future. And I looked at those detached nacelles, and I just thought, you know what? So here's just my latest take on what I'd like to do with Starfleet Academy. So I'd like to do a series of really short, like 2-3 minute, 4-minute AI videos called Starfleet Academy, and this would be the first one. It'd be set at the time of the Starfleet Academy that that's on the air now, Kurtzman Trek, and it would have all of the general characters of Kurtzman Trek. They'd have the what is Starfleet Academy if not a collection of large black lesbians, and all of that stuff, and they'll be wearing their uniforms and all that, right? And then it's going to open up with a guy, and he's going to be looking at sensor data. It's going to be happening way in the future. He's going to be looking at sensor data, and he's going to realize, to his astonishment, that he's like a Starfleet intelligence officer. He's going to realize, to his astonishment and his horror, that the Romulans and the Klingons and everybody else have built up enormous reserves of vessels, and they've moved them all to the border of the Federation at the same time, on all the different borders. So this guy calls a emergency briefing at Starfleet Command, and all of the wise Latinas who are making the decisions for Starfleet Command say that he's being paranoid and it's just maneuvers and there's nothing to worry about, and it's just toxic masculinity, and since he's a white male, he's also degraded, and the effing hubris, and all of that, right? So the guy gets his appropriate comeuppance and whipping for being a white male heterosexual with an idea. And so some time passes, do a little bit of CG, and all of a sudden this invasion starts. And it just rolls back the Federation like the way the Germans rolled back the Russians. And ships and outposts are just getting blown out of the water. And they're calling for instructions, and Starfleet Command is saying, no, don't provoke them. It's obviously a misunderstanding. I'm making this up, Carlton. This is what I want to do with Starfleet Academy. And it's just horrific. Federation ships getting into combat for the first time. They're getting the hell blown out of them. Ships are running away. They're ducking for cover. All of these out-of-shape fat people, nothing against out-of-shape fat people. I'm just talking about as a Starfleet standard for the, for the people in their 20s and so on. It's the ultimate catastrophe. In fact, it's clear after a week in this first episode that it's the end of the Federation, that there is absolutely no way that they can stop them given the speed of the advance and the magnitude of the problem. So everybody's in a panic. A lot of the leadership is saying, well, we had a good run. A lot of Denethor kind of thing, like go find a place to hide or die, that kind of thing. And nobody knows what to do. And I don't know if it's going to be maybe the same intelligence guy, but somebody is going to say, we do have one possibility to save the Federation. Well, what is it? Well, it would involve breaking the most established and fundamental taboo that we have in the United Federation of Planets. And they're saying, well, what is it? And I kind of got clever with the writing and so on. The guy will say, Starfleet Command, it's not the Prime Directive. No. It's much more subversive than this. So this guy, this intelligence guy, he's kind of like the John Boyd, right? This intelligence guy says, Starfleet Command has a complete record of every transporter transaction in the history of Starfleet. We have the data for every single transporter action on board a Starfleet vessel since there's been transporters. He says, we need to go back and we need to grab some warriors. And I have just the guy in mind. And then the next thing you see is it's all these modern, Star Trek people. And it's a transporter room. And Kirk beams in. And it's Kirk right after the end of, they say, we got to grab him right after Battle of Khitomer. So he beams in. He looks around, sees everybody there. He says, what am I doing here? And that's the end of the first episode. And yes, so how do they bring Kirk back? Do they go back in time? Do they clone? No. Every time they transport from one place, every time you use a transporter from one place to another, you destroy Jim Kirk's body, but you also destroy his mind, because if you weren't able to copy what he was thinking and his memories and his personality, he'd beam down on a planet as just a big hunk of meat. So they have to have that stuff every time they do a transporter thing, and they had memories, no storage is no issue. So they could grab Kirk at any time they want to. But the reason this is such a big taboo is because if you do that with Kirk, you can do that with anybody, and then the transporters are no longer transportation. They are they're immortality machines. Essentially, Kirk's been backed up. And the same thing happened with Scotty on a TNG episode or something. So the second episode is basically Kirk is told why he's brought back. And he looks at the tactical situation. And he says, how did you let it get to this point? Well, blah, 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 blah. And the Federation is collapsing. I mean, it's just almost in real time it's collapsing. And they're saying, my God, what are we going to, what should we do? And Kirk says, well, we should fight him is what we should do. And he says, and I'm going to need some help. So Kirk, the second episode is Kirk getting an idea of the tactical situation. And it's horrible. And it turns out that the new Starfleet ships are not a whole lot more effective than the ones from the present era. And you get the general idea. So I'm just going to skip along just a little bit. And when he says I'm going to need some help, at the end of the second episode, he's standing in the movie Enterprise transporter room, and he came in on his maroon outfit, and then Spock and McCoy beam in on the movie Enterprise transporter room, and they said, "What's going on, Jim? What the hell are we doing here?" And he says, "Come with me, guys. I've got some bad news." And he goes out the door to the transporter room, and it opens up into the far future Federation. And then what happens is they look at this. This is the part I actually love the most because this to me is just great. So you get the idea, right? So they next time they bring back Scotty, but they don't bring back Scotty from the movie. They say Scotty's a little lost. They bring back Scotty from Star Trek: The Motion Picture Scotty. Okay, they bring back Scotty, and they're all just them, just the old crew of the Enterprise, and they're sitting around, and they're saying, "What the hell's going on?" And they've had time to study and stuff. And I mean, Bones, what's happened to people? And Bones basically says, "Well, Jim, it's real simple. The testosterone levels have fallen to the level of 90-year-old men. There just isn't anymore. This whole thing is just swimming in a sea of estrogen. My God. And they bring Scotty back, and they take a look, Scotty and Spock, and they're doing this analysis, and they're saying the new ships are crud. The big ships like Enterprise F are about 40% or maybe 50% or maybe even 60% more powerful than the Constitution class Enterprise, or maybe they're 80% more powerful, significantly more powerful, right? And they're sitting there and they're doing this analysis, and what they discover is that to make something like Enterprise F, for the resources and time it would take to make Enterprise F, they could make the most efficient number of starships that would be less powerful, but there'd be a lot more of them. And they do the calculations, and it turns out that you could make 7 individual hulls in the time it would take to make one Enterprise F. And what they say is, okay, so what ship was it? What was it? And it turns out it was the Constitution class refit. That was the most efficient use of resources. So they start building a shitload of these things. Dave Big Booty says Enterprise A, and Kirk is there, and he says, all right, let's get these things, done, and maybe the end of this, because they're really building them fast because they've got the ability to build bigger ships now. And he says, all right, let's get them built, and let's get them renumbered. And he says, and when you remake the Enterprise, because Dave Big Booty to me beat again. Scotty says, there's no bloody A in my ship's name. Scotty has that line in Next Generation, but this Scotty never got to the Next Generation. In fact, this Scotty never got to Wrath of Khan. So there's kind of cool, kind of different timelines that they've been plucked out of to get these guys at their best. So meanwhile, so now Federation is building these Constitution class ships like crazy because they need hulls, and then they have. So then Kirk can basically start going through the whole thing and cut. He can do this from the beginning. He can. From the very second episode, he can start saying, what's wrong with the people? What's wrong with the people? And he just looks around, and he's walking through these crowds of, I got this one shot in my mind. This is going to be really cool. You take a scene from the Starfleet Academy that just aired, right? This vastly diverse group of people sitting around eating apples, and lounging on the blankets, and standing around. And I just thought, if you had that shot and you establish it, and they're all wearing the new uniforms, and then all of a sudden, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy come walking through with a purpose, like heads down, and they're just walking through these people, and they're just getting the hell out of the way. So I think you could probably run with this whole thing. And I thought what would be really cool would be Spock is reviewing all of the Starfleet commanders after when they were yanked. Okay? And he says, well, not much after us. Some things before us. And so it's almost like Mission Impossible, at the TV show, where they're picking up, the pictures and stuff and putting together the crew. And Kirk says, well, I know who I want first. And so this is how the routine works. He says, I know who I want first, and the next thing you do is you go to the transporter room, and the first three people that beam up are Garth of Izar and the other two captains from Axanar. That will blow people's minds. Right? Blow people's minds. I think probably what I'll do is probably say, you know what, it's probably best just to build the ships that they were in, because you don't want to train crews, you don't want to, in fact, that's a better idea. You don't want to train crews, you probably bring the whole crew back. So next thing you know, you got an Axanar out there and an Ares. And they bring back the crew of Axanar and, all of this stuff. And then I think for me, this just for me is going to piss off some people, but I don't care. I think they said, after our departure, not a whole lot. And it says, well, there's somebody we need. And you see the transporter. This time you're like behind the guy who's being beamed in, and you can see Kirk and Spock and McCoy and maybe Garth and a couple of other people there. Not Archer yet. Kirk says, I need somebody for Starfleet Chief of Naval Operations. I can't be doing that and all of the other things that we have to do. I can't be doing it. We need somebody who's a Chief of Naval Operations. And they're saying, oh, man. So you're behind the transporter room. You see this beam up, and you see this uniform from Star Trek The Next Generation, right? It's the red uniform. It's clearly all of this. And, and you think, here comes Picard. And the guy steps off the transporter thing, and it's Jellicoe. That would be the frickin' bomb, dude. The absolute bomb. And, just do it. And it's like, so you have all of these iconic, you bring back Archer. You can't, Kirk's point is, this is really Spock's point. We can't, it is too expensive and time consuming to build these new ships. And Scotty says they're just rubbish anyway. Rubbish. And so Kirk says, well, let's build simpler things. That's what the Americans did with the Sherman tank. We probably could have built a tank that was the equivalent of the Tiger, but we couldn't get it there. We didn't have time. We needed quantity. And so Kirk is saying, well, we can build we could build an Ares, from Axanar. It's going to have 10-20% of the total firepower of an Enterprise F, but we can have it in 3.5 months instead of 4 years, or whatever the time scale is, and there you go. So I think that would be the best way to retcon this whole thing, is they just basically say, your attitudes, yeah, we should bring back Yeoman Rand, absolutely. In fact, Kirk should insist on that, Roadrunner. It's like, yeah, they're just going through like a checklist. We'll need Sulu, we'll need Chekhov, we need this, we'll have this, and then we'll bring back the entire crew of the Farragut, and we'll bring back all of this, and then as time runs out, as they start getting closer to a little further along, somebody mentioned it, had anticipated it, but it would be kind of cool to see like a room full of like 12 Kirks. 12 of them just talking to each other in a room, yeah. Now, really, it's just me. I just want to have a scene where finally they bring back Picard, and you've seen all this stuff going on, and they want to know why this isn't Bill's claiming he doesn't like the multiverse solution. This is the epitome of a multiverse solution. On the contrary, there's no multiverse in here at all, Eric. You completely dropped the thread here. There is no multiverse. I'm not calling them in from alternate timelines. There's one timeline, and they have found a technological solution to bring them back. It's not like they're beaming them in from extra dimensional portals. They're just picking what time were they at their peak in their career. That would be really funny, and I think I'd just love to have a scene where Kirk just says to Picard, "You're not a fighting captain." What? I've won many battles. Yeah, but you're not a fighting captain. You're a diplomatic captain, and we need some diplomacy over here because we've got to stall them, and I need somebody who can talk to them and convince them that you do your thing, we'll do our thing, hold the line over here, and stall them. We'll allocate the resources to build you the Enterprise D or the F or something, whatever the case may be. I just think that would be like the ultimate fan kind of slap back in the face of all of this. And it'd be great because Scotty could be talking to like the modern engineers, the engineers of the TV show Starfleet Academy. And he's basically saying, why don't you attach the nacelle? Why did you detach the nacelles? And the engineers are saying, well, because we can put a tractor beam on one side, tractor beam on the other, and it just pulls it along. And he says, for God's sakes, laddie, have you never been in combat? And it's like, no. Well, what happens when the power goes out? Well, we've got backup power. So we have to decide whether or not we can take extra power to the shields, but we can't do that because we have to have power to hang on to our own engine nacelles. And Scotty's just losing his mind. He's just losing his mind. And it would be a way to be the voice of like the entire Real Trek fandom. Anything that didn't have Kurtzman attached to it is fair game in this. I can bring back anybody, and I just think that'd be really, really fun. I just think it'd be so much fun. Yeah. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Crispy Mofo says Kirk was the captain of his time, Picard was the captain of his time. That's correct. Kirk made the galaxy safe for Picard to sip tea in. And Lynn says, but Mr. Scott, we don't have the knowledge of how to do that anymore. Oh, for God's sake, Well, that's why I'm here. I just think it would be whatever it is. If they're not attached, so there's something that's holding them on, the nacelle. Something's holding them on that's not a piece of metal. And I just want to laugh at that. I just want to mock it. And then Kirk is trying to get the officer corps back. So he's talking to this whole crowd of people, and he's the fun part would be having Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and whoever else In fact, maybe all of them. Maybe all of them. That would be really cool. And you bring back like the hardcore fighters, right? And they're all in a room together, and they're trying to figure out what the hell happened, in the intervening time, and they're just talking about how soft everybody got, and how just how feminized the whole thing got. Decker, I could bring back Decker before he went crazy. Absolutely, yeah. But see, that's the beautiful thing about it. You can just have them in the room, right? And every episode they bring back more and more of our people. So, so one of the things I wanted to do is have the Kirk in front of Starfleet Academy, in front of the cadets, and he's basically looking at him, and somewhere in the speech I want him to be standing up at this podium, and I want him to say, they do it with a hologram or maybe just whatever, and you look to the right, and he says, from this point forward, no more custom tailoring. Starfleet uniforms will come in 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. And if you don't fit into any of those sizes, then you are out of here. We can't have people who are not disciplined enough to control what they eat trying to save the Federation of Planets. If you're not disciplined enough to control what you eat, why don't you think you're disciplined enough to command a starship in wartime? I just think that would be freaking awesome. And every episode you could just kind of just surprise people and just pull like really obscure people back to, just people like were just really kind of, well, Jellicoe's a great example of that. Just somebody, who's just like a fan favorite or something. Decker would be a great example. Decker, the other Decker from the motion picture, I thought he was effective. Love the idea of bringing back Worf and Data. I'd bring back Riker. I'd bring back Riker way before I brought back Picard. And if they don't like it, that's too bad. They can make their own AI versions. So anyway, one other thing. One of the things, this is a little thing, and then we'll go to the questions. This little thing, but when they're talking about, well, what the hell have they done in the last 1,000 years, right? What have they done in the last 1,000 years? The ships are less effective than they used to be, and the weapons haven't advanced, And Scotty says, well, sir, the one thing that has advanced is automation. We could probably run a Constitution class refit with 1/10 of the crew that we used to have. And they're saying, well, we're going to be, assembling these ships. What are we going to do with that? Well, sir, we could put extra phasers in them. We could put in a few more torpedo bays. Let's do it. Let's do it. I think that's great. So, yeah, Kirk. Kirk would come back, and he wouldn't even bother criticizing them. He would just get them out of the way. Torx Bamboo Bazooka says a storytelling device is too powerful. You'd have to have them degrade over time and have to go back to the transporter so the plot can have them temporarily and then be free of them. I don't think so. I think they can decide whether or not they want to live in this future after they save the Federation, or whether or not they want to get back in the transporter and then be taken back to where they were going originally, so that as far as they're concerned, it never happened. But it's not a multiverse. It's not a time loop. It's none of those things. It is simply using the existing technology to do this. Now, Dark Rodent says, I likes it, but can we bring back Data and Worf too? See, this is where it could be really, really cool. Let's say that you've assembled your crack team, and by the way, the Federation is just collapsing. I mean, it's just collapsing, and billions or trillions of people have died, right? These are the Klingons and the Romulans. They've been waiting for this for hundreds of years. They know that they can't attack the Federation hard and not kill it. So they've just been building and building and building and building and building. And Kirk is just doing this, this Fabian kind of strategy. We're just going to fall back, resist them here, resist them here. We're going to have to sacrifice a fleet here. We just have no choice to sacrifice a fleet here. And we're going to have to do this. And then, but wouldn't it be cool if it turned out like there was some kind of like some sort of technological issue, like some really like science or tech heavy thing, and Kirk says, "All right, Mr. Spock, I want you to work on this problem," and Spock says, "Yes, sir." And he turns to Data and he says, "Would you care to assist?" So now you got Spock and Data working on a tech problem together. That would be pretty fucking, pretty freaking cool. So, yeah, I just think it'd be fun. I think the fans would just eat it alive. And we mentioned this on the last Stratosphere Studio show, where I mentioned there's somebody out there who's doing pretty good AI representations of Star Wars. And I mentioned then, and I think this is absolutely true, is that the whole world is inverted now, where the only things that the fans will trust is fan-made stuff, is fan fiction, and that the canonical stuff is just erased. Just erased. I love it. I think it's just great. Did you see the Babylon Bee headline on this, by the way? They did a picture of taken exactly from the TV show, and it's the little woman commander. Why can I never remember her name? She's just terrific. And then the big woman, and then the big Earth woman in the blue suit. And the Babylon Bee headline is Starfleet USS something like USS Athena unable to achieve Warp 1. Holly Hunter, USS Athena unable to achieve Warp 1 because of excess weight. They couldn't get the ship to warp speed because the crew was so fat. That'd be just freaking epic. I really think I need to do this. And of course, the Klingons and the Romulans and everybody else could make the same mistake. But this time they'd be right. That the Federation's become weak and decadent and all of that stuff. Be fun. Anyway, I was thinking about that a lot today. I just thought it'd be really, really cool. And I think we could get a lot of views on it, frankly, a lot of views. Beefire says, I think this needs a priority one. Well, I could run it at BillWhittle.com for one thing, and it would generate some views. Oh, and yeah, little last thing. I don't know if they've got this in Starfleet Academy, but I don't know if they've got a motto for Starfleet, but if they don't, I'll give them one. And the motto will be Starfleet Academy. I'm not taking it away from the colonies. Starfleet Academy, your pathway to the stars, or something like that. And Kirk looks at this and says, "Well, let's just take that off right now." And he's saying, "We need a new motto. Got any ideas?" And Spock suggests in Latin, he suggests merito, which is Latin for by merit. Oh, when you translate it back, it says, "I deserve it." But something along those lines. We'll get some Latin experts in here. I just had to get that out of my system. I just think it's really fun. Anyway, that's I'm spending my morning half awake, still trying to get up there, per merit. That's Permeritus. Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it. What happens if you translate that backwards? By merit. Yeah, Permeritus. And all of you communist, feminist, Star Trek hating, dumb as a bunch of rocks, sociology majors who are writing for this show now can kiss my we'll figure it out. I think this thing would be gigantic. Anyway, Dave's really area says 51 says Kirk doesn't even have to take down the motto; he just pulls it down with no comment. He actually should pull a phaser and just blast it. You know, that'd be fun. Something to think about. Anyway, let's see what we got for tonight. Questions for 116.26, which is, oh, thank you, Eric. Good, great. Collated by Eric Blake. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. So let's see what we got. We got a Roadrunner. We got a Marusha Dark. We got a Capital G Geek. We got a Roadrunner. We got a Guy Balo. We got a Guy Balo. Steve Young. Brandon Higbee. Eric Blake. Okay, we can do that. Let's see. Okay, Roadrunner. Greetings, friend Bill. Hey, you Roadrunner. How are you, buddy? Hi there, GK. How can we expect the government to stop the fraud and abuse that is rampant in our country when the politicians are a direct beneficiary of all the graft? Well, there's your problem. Almost all politicians find a way to become millionaires during their terms. Can we really expect them to fix a problem that they openly benefit from? I'll tell you this. Nothing is going to change until some really high-level people are perp walked into jail. And I would start that parade with Tim Walz. I'd start with him. I would look, I wouldn't do this without evidence because I believe in the American system, I believe in the Constitution, and I believe I would rather have things done constitutionally and lose than have them done extra constitutionally and win. But since the evidence is basically so overwhelming, I think that they ought to put Tim Walz in jail. I think they ought to deport Ilhan Omar and the rest of the anyone else who's doing that kind of agitation. I think the Somalians go home. And this is the step that's going to be really morally tough. Is look, I'm not even saying we can do the relatively easily stuff yet, but I have no moral problem deporting people whose primary allegiance is not to the United States. I have no problem deporting those people at all if they are, obviously if they're illegal immigrants, if they're here on a green card and so on. Once they get an American citizenship, that's a much tougher issue. But I mean, England, to survive, is going to have to, what is the term they use? It's not export, there's a term for it. What is that called? Are they calling it reportation? Is that it? Remigrate. Okay. Yeah, so like, how do you, I mean, look, I don't think Somalians are a good match for our culture. And how do you handle this? Remigration is what is the term that's being used in Europe. But it's a dicey issue morally because I don't want to become a totalitarian fascist state. I think probably what would satisfy me is any provable statement made by an individual that was clearly intended to destroy American values. Whenever you see like somebody saying, we're here, we're Somalians, we're taking over Minneapolis, and we're going to take over Minnesota, then we're going to take over the United States. See ya. Same thing goes for Islam. Same thing goes for anybody. Anybody. But I think the whole, they said that one of the, and nobody really knows how much money they've taken out of the country, but it is a lot. Benjamin Good over on YouTube says Jack Posobiec, I can't pronounce his name, reported that a grand jury returned subpoenas for both Jacob Frey and Tim Waltz on obstruction of justice. Not sure it's true yet. Mike Knowles Eric says Mike Knowles had the idea of making Greenland America's Siberia, as a place to exile people. I think, it's never going to happen for me because my wife is from a very cold place and she never wants to live in a cold place again. But I think if Greenland were actually legally bought and Greenlanders voted for it, I don't really care what the Danes think about it. I don't really care what the EU thinks about it, but I do care what the Greenlanders think about it. I think if you were to buy Greenland and the people who live in Greenland actually voted for it, then I would feel all right with it. If it turns out that that they don't, then it's an invasion, and just buy the minerals. But Mrs. Whittle, Eric says, well, Mrs. Whittle ain't getting arrested. Mrs. Whittle is carrying her passport around with her everywhere she goes, just in case there's, a mistake. But I think anybody that has I think any politician that can be proven that politician violated the law in order for either financial gain or political advantage, and by doing so, for example, imported a bunch of people illegally or whatever, I think that person should be denaturalized and exiled. I really do. Dave says, hey, Bill, did you hear about the massive European force headed off to defend Greenland? Trump is just trolling the hell out of these people. I see, people like Mark Buffalo screaming about how, he's going to get a third term. It's like, this is the truest thing has ever been said about Trump. And this is why the people who support Trump support him, and the people who don't. 24 soldiers, was it 34? 34 people, is that right? Wow, okay. Recall the fleet. But liberals take Trump literally, but they don't take him seriously. And conservatives take Trump seriously, but they don't take him literally. And that is the big difference. There you go. Over there on YouTube, Jen Knudsen says it was 9 years ago, but the atmosphere in the UK was different. From the 8 years I lived there in the 90s, the regular Brits of all stripes are struggling to protest without tripping the auto arrest fee. Yeah, 12,000 people have been arrested in Great Britain over the last year, I think, for offensive tweets. 12,000 arrested and jailed, and number of rapists and stuff jailed. 3, something like that. What a tragedy! An amazing country, and what an absolute catastrophe. But I will say this, to help you with this whole thing, Roadrunner, is that I don't know about you guys, but clearly the world is changing. All of these taboos against, well, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't. People are just over it. I think they're just plain over it, and the question is it in time? You know, I think it's in time for us, but. I was gonna, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. Never mind. Marusha Dark, topic: R.I.P. Scott Adams. Yeah, I imagine most people this week are offering thoughts and prayers to Scott Adams following his recent passing. If it'll permit me, I just wanted to share my own story of him in tribute, the same way as I did for Charlie Kirk. Most people remember Scott for Dilbert, but I think his nonfiction books were far more impactful, and certainly he hoped they would be. Although I grew up reading Dilbert in the newsroom, and the cartoon was amazing, I actually rediscovered Scott in college. I just finished reading the Hitchhiker's series by Douglas Adams, did a Google search to see if I'd written anything else, and it happened upon his books, God's Debris, mistakenly thinking it was the same guy. For me personally, God's Debris was formative in becoming a deist and is a framework I largely still hold to this day. Of course, Win Bigly and How to Fail at Almost Everything imbue invaluable skills. I've yet to read Loser Think or Reframe Your Brain, but they're on my list, and I don't doubt they will have a similar impact. At the time, I was also binge watching Stéphane Mallieu regularly, and Steph had Scott on as a guest. That's around the time I started following him, back when he still did Periscopes on Twitter. Scott was a master of persuasion and rhetorical intelligence and taught me many things. His 2 movies, one screen framing during the Charlottesville protests, gave me a unique perspective on a feud between Sarkhan of Akkad and Anita Sarskian. That same year, in which I was able to see both sides of the VidCon incident, the one where she called him a garbage human. I eventually went on to meet Sargon in New York City and explained this to him. We became quick friends. Shortly after that, Sargon became less of a dick to people in general, I think largely due to my and Tim Flool's influence that night. I would later get to meet Anita during her only live podcast in New York, and the simulation smiled on me because her topic of discussion that day happened to be Scott Adams and Candace Owens at the start of the Blexit movement, significant in part because I'm among the few people who discovered Candace before anyone who knew she was. What are the odds? These are but a few of the coincidences in my life that lead me to believe Scott is likely correct that we live in a simulation. In the end, he believed that the universe always takes the path of what makes for the most interesting story, and I look forward to Joel Pollak's biography of him to learn more about Scott's story. Godspeed, Scott Adams. May the simulation bless you in your next incarnation and reward you for all that you've lost and for all that you've given. You said your goal was to be useful to humanity, and I'd say few have ever hit the mark like you. Be well, my friend. You were loved and will be missed. Very nice. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Now even swampier with Spamberger and the Dems running the state. The Democrats controlled all 3 branches of government from 2003 to 2007, 2017 to 19, and now again since 2025, and they really haven't done anything with it. In the UK, Carl Benjamin has a 0 seats campaign where they are planning to punish their equivalent of rhinos by not electing any that aren't proven to be pro-England, anti-migration. Do we need something similar in this midterm cycle? Barring mass arrests for Epstein, corruption, graft, etc., I don't see Republicans keeping the House or the Senate. With taking a hard L, while I know we have a Republican president for the next 2 years, be worth getting rid of rhinos like Murkowski, Graham, McConnell, Eye Patch McCain, and so on. It is, somebody can easily calculate the percentage or get it from Grok or ChatGPT. But as a general rule, with some notable exceptions, the House flips 2 years after the president is elected. Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat elected, 2 years after a Republican or Democrat is elected, the trend is that the House will flip. So that obviously favors the Democrats. A lot of Republicans have lost a lot of enthusiasm. We were thinking we'd be seeing a lot more progress by now. On the other hand, we've seen a lot of progress that we didn't expect to see. I will say that the one thing in this equation that could tip the balance is that, and this is not being at least to me, it's not widely being broadcast right now because it's, hasn't happened yet. But predictions are that GDP growth for 2026 is going to be in excess of 6%. Not 2%, not 3%, 6% plus GDP growth for the United States in 2026. That could go a long way to the "are you better off now" argument. If Trump does go ahead and do things like, people said that, I heard some people say that Venezuela owes us some oil or whatever. I have lost the thread of foreign oil ever since I realized that we have more oil under our own feet. We should just go get that, frankly. But in any event, if that oil were used to reduce gas prices by $2 a gallon or something like that, whatever it's going to be, it's got to be something that everybody feels and feels pretty much on a daily basis. You're going to have to lower prices in general, but a booming economy means people have more money in their pockets, and it also means just a general optimism, a sense that things are getting better. And I cannot ever remember 6% economic growth. I don't think it's ever existed in my lifetime. But what they need to do, well, for example, Andrew DeLay says best thing the Republicans could do is pass voter ID for all 50 states. Why they don't is a mystery to me. Yeah, I think we are in the case of Minnesota, pretty reasonably close to meeting the standards of insurrection. And I saw a cartoon that basically was a cartoon of an iceberg, and how an iceberg 10% above the surface, 90% below the surface. And the cartoon said Minnesota on the top and then California on the bottom. Trillions of dollars have been stolen from California. There's no question about it, none. And that I want to see some high-profile people go to jail. I want to see them in jail. In fact, that's all I want. I will be perfectly happy with Trump's first 2 years if I see people go to jail. Even one would do it, I thought Comey was going down. Oh, that kind of fizzled out. Hillary and Bill have declined their invitation to testify in front of Congress, their subpoena, and they're, either one or both of those would do it. Pelosi, Ilhan Omar, Waltz, even if it was just Waltz, I just want to see one person held accountable and actually pay a penalty and go to jail. I know that body cam videos are on the bingo cards, so everybody mark your cards accordingly. However, one of the things that is so frustrating is seeing what these policemen go through and the amount of frustration and the abuse that they take and all of this, in addition to the danger and the risk. And they end up getting spat on and kicked in the face and all of this. And the person goes up for fourth account of DUI, driving with a suspended license, resisting arrest, assault on a policeman with violence, aggravated assault with violence, all of this stuff. And you find out charges were dropped, given 2 months probation or 6 or whatever the case may be. And it's enough to make you lose your mind. And I can't take any of this seriously until I start seeing the law getting enforced. Crispy Mofo says, get rid of Pam, play for pay Bondi, and then the Shinola will start happening. So 26, we're already, I almost said next year, but we're already halfway through the first month. In the next 6-7 months, at the absolute drop dead latest, we need to see the economy booming, prices down, and for the base, we need to see people going to jail. And until I see that, I'm I'm not gonna believe it. So as far as it goes, capital G, time will tell, and I don't have a prediction on this. I have not been impressed so far. I am very, very, very curious to see Dan Bongino's first show, which I think is February 2nd. And yeah, so we'll see. But that 6% economic growth looks like a real deal, and that could be. I mean, that is that kind of. It's not like they're predicting 3.5 or something good. That's a monster number. So we'll see. All right, here we go. Moving on. Roadrunner. Buenas noches, amigo Guillermo. Buenas noches, amigo Roadrunner. From Nueva Mexico. Nueva Mexico. So immigration enforcement has never been controversial before President Trump was elected? Question mark? No, of course not. No, I guess no one remembers Elian Gonzalez. I do. I haven't seen video of ICE agents pointing a rifle at a 6-year-old child. Of course, this was during Bill Clinton's presidency, so progressives had no problems with this and supported it. If it weren't for double standards, progressives would have no standards at all. Hope Natasha's made a full recovery from her trip last year. She's doing better every day. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Let me just scroll ahead and see if anybody covers what I'm about to talk about again here. Okay, I'll deal with it. I got a question that kind of goes around it in a few. We talked about immigration a bit already tonight, but I think this is another 80-20 issue. What's clear to I'll deal with it. I come back around to it. Somebody asked a question about riots and things of that nature. You're right about the double standards. Obviously, I don't know how many people Trump has actually deported. Obama did 3 million. Nobody said boo. This is what happens when the entire structure is rigged against the American people. I am deeply encouraged by just how much excitement was generated by the Golden Globes this year. It's like watching a gut-shot animal stagger into the woods. Oscars will be the same way. That may not sound really important, but people are openly mocking CNN now, and Trump just calls him out. I don't know what to really add to this. Yeah, it's a great point. P7 2017 says, if there was so much public support for eliminating ICE, why do they have to pay the agitators? Well, first of all, you got to understand, first of all, you're absolutely right. More to the point, paid agitators serve the same basic function as the Hamas raid on Israel. So the reason Hamas invaded Israel and murdered 1,400 people a couple of years ago was because Israel had no choice but to apply overwhelming response to Gaza. And that's what Hamas wanted. And Hamas was right. It's a disgraceful and disgusting thing to say, but Hamas knew what they were doing and they played it right. The strategy for terrorism and this kind of asymmetrical warfare is create video footage of people suffering and air that. And when you've got the mass media of the world, BBC and all of the networks and so on, no pictures of the slaughtered Israeli children, lots of pictures of bombed children in Gaza, and the the public opinion, I haven't seen any actual polls, but clearly American opinion towards Israel has taken an enormous hit as a result of Israel's response to this massacre. And you have to have some kind of a moral foundation and some kind of a historical, at least some kind of a fundamental education to not be swayed by this. But they gambled correctly that the huge number of young people in this country are so badly educated, they're so indoctrinated, they're so willing to support the present thing, that they basically made sure that when they attacked Israel, it was so horrific that Israel had no choice other than to hit them really, really hard. And I understood that by the end of the day of the Hamas attack. I understood it completely. The PLO, and when it was the PLO and all the rest of it, has always been willing to put their own people out into the street, hoping that a child is going to get shot by a stray bullet, and then they will put the cameras on the child, and then the people who are acting in self-defense will get demonized, and they could never get away with this if it weren't for the so-called news media, but those are all just leftists. However, looking on the bright side, leftism has, clearly failed. If you look at Gen Z especially, they're not feeling any white guilt. Gen Z is not feeling any of the things that they've been told to feel, because Gen Z has been victimized from the time they were born. I can find a lot of young white males from Gen Z feeling the whole DEI thing, because they're the ones who are getting screwed by it. And like all left-wing ideas from every single communist state in history and other examples, but basically you could look at the last 50, 60 years of American history as a failed communist revolution in America, cold revolution. It's not over yet, but clearly they have not won. And my generation was the first generation to have to endure this. It really touched a nerve with me last week when I can't remember the name. Basically said, "This is your fault, boomers. You built this." It's like, but Ian Nolan, I don't remember. I didn't build that. The left did. But in any event, clearly, nobody believes anymore that government is the answer to the problem in inner cities. Nobody believes anymore that the problem for underperforming ethnic groups is they don't get enough money, or they don't see representation of themselves on TV, or all the rest of it. We've seen the last 25 years have been nothing but reverse racism, and it hasn't brought forth, these competent, disciplined, intelligent, self-controlled left-wing leaders. It's just enabled a generation or two of adult children who have temper tantrums and steal everything they get their hands on. So it has failed. There's no question that nobody believes the big liberal experiment that really started in the 60s, was planned in the 50s by guys like Saul Alinsky, the giant, that's just slipped my mind. Hang on a second. It'll come back in a second. Critical theory, critical race theory. It hasn't worked. They've shoved it down our throats as hard as they can. They've destroyed things like Star Wars and Star Trek and all the rest of it. It's corrupted the government. They've stolen trillions of dollars and all of this stuff. But it hasn't worked. We're not feeling good about it. No one's buying the action figures. No one's buying the Tim Waltz action figures, and that's the metric that you have. If things like if things like Starfleet Academy and and the Acolyte were breaking records for viewership, then I would be genuinely scared, because that would indicate that the vast majority of the population buy this crap. But the fact that they're spectacular failures and that all of the 2025 movies have been completely failures is an indication to me that no one's buying it because no one believes it. So what happens when you have a left-wing ideology that's failing is the true believers that launch the revolution. At least be like first, I can't keep track of the waves of feminists, but I'm talking people like Gloria Steinem and so on, and Norman Lear, those people in the 60s and 70s, true believers that this would change the world. And then the second generation and the third generation and the fourth generation now, and all it's done is make things worse. So it's not going to work. And reality's on our side, so that's reality is undefeated over the long term. So there you go. Let's see. Guy Balo. Greetings, Bill. What should our role be in the revolution in Iran? We, as Americans, usually try to support the good guys or the lesser of two evils, not always successfully, unfortunately. But we can all agree that the current regime is definitely not the good guys here. But will whoever replaces it be a friend to us and our allies, or just similar terrorists with different names? We could help them with some strategic airstrikes as long as there's minimal risk to our military. We need to make it crystal clear to whoever is running the new government in Iran that if they start acting like terrorists again, they will get warheads on foreheads. That's a great expression. Any thoughts? So, look, we've learned a lot since 2001. And it was a real big bloody experiment. And this is my take on it. Afghanistan showed us that you cannot build a nation out of tribalism. The belief was that democracy was a universal desire, and it may in fact be. But what Afghanistan showed us was that you cannot impose that without the groundwork, the moral, religious, political, philosophical, sociological foundation. I did read your email, Wes. Thank you. So that Iraq had more of a civilizational structure than Afghanistan, because everything does. And Iraq, I think Iraq was probably salvageable up until about 2005 or 6 or 7, when the United States allowed Iraq to institutionalize Sharia into its constitution. That was the end of that. If we had done what we did in World War II and gone in with somebody like MacArthur, who basically dictated, here's your constitution, get used to it, I think there would have been enough popular support for it that it might have taken hold. There's no way to tell, but once the United States allowed an Iraq constitution that had all of the elements of their previous failures in it, then it was lost cause. And the reason I mentioned Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran is a significantly more advanced and stable civilization than Iraq, which is considerably more advanced and stable than Afghanistan. Iran is a functioning country, and was pretty successful prior to the Iranian revolution, Roadrunner beat me to the point in capital letters. He says Iran is not a Muslim country. It's not. It's a Persian country. And if Iran were to come out of this with I'm a realist, so I'll say with a non-Islamic government, it doesn't have to be a pro-Western government, it just has to be a non-theocracy, then I think it's a win. As far as our ability to help, Iran is not just a country. Iran is the magnetic center of all of the terrorism that's going on in the world. Iran is, if you can topple the regime in Iran, you get rid of the Houthis, you get rid of Hamas, you get rid of Hezbollah. They all just disappear if Iran goes down. I am, just be clear on this, okay? I am 100% against putting U.S. troops on the ground in Iran. 100% against it. If we didn't learn anything, that's the one thing we learned. However, the nice thing about being the big dog on the block is we don't have to do that. We could simply topple the regime from the combat control centers in destroyers and submarines. From literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away. We could just simply knock out that regime. We could just do it if we wanted to. And I think there's a good case to be made for it morally. There's an unbeatable case to be made for it strategically in terms of it being interest of the United States to get rid of this country that's been at war with us since 1979. I have no problem whatsoever with knocking that regime off. None. I think morally, I concern myself with moral problems because I don't want to be what the left says we are, because I don't think we are that thing. For example, in Venezuela, my opinion, my moral opinion on Venezuela is when I saw Venezuelans popping champagne corks, celebrating, cheering in the streets, and other countries throughout South America cheering this action, I knew I'm on the right side of that. That's the removal of a communist dictator who has been sending fatal drugs into our country and got smacked. So is it a violation of Venezuelan sovereignty? No question it is. And does it make the Europeans completely nervous? Yes, it does. It gets them very skittish. I've seen some Germans on YouTube and Facebook using very harsh language about how they're going to defend Europe and defend Greenland and all the rest of it. So that's my take on how American power should be applied. It has to be in United States national interests. It has to be something that does not expose us to counterfire in any realistic way. What I mean by that is they can't touch our B-2s. They can touch our troops. I don't want the troops there. I want to be able to push buttons from the other side of the planet. We paid a lot of money for that technology, and I don't know if you guys have heard any of these stories that came out of Venezuela, but some of the accounts of Venezuelan soldiers who were in, did it actually happen in Caracas? I assume it did, said that something happened. They were bleeding out of their ears and out of their nose. They were stunned. They couldn't think. There was some kind of sonic weapon. There are reports that energy weapons came down out of the sky. And there's no question that American Cyber Command just took down the entire electrical grid of the city. To me, this is the perfect form of moral warfare. If you can achieve your country's national security, now obviously we killed a couple of hundred of their guys, I guess, but they were the Palace Guard. I find it very, very interesting and telling that Maduro's Praetorian Guard was made up of Cubans and not made out of Venezuelans. So in this kind of intervention, same thing for Midnight Hammer. I'm in favor of it. I think that it's in America's interest to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. And if you said, okay, Bill, that's going to it's going to require 10,000 guys on the ground, and you're going to lose 2,000 killed and 4,000 wounded, then I'm saying, well, that's not worth the trade. But if you're telling me that we're going to put 160 aircraft in the air, and we're going to have B-2 bombers take off from Missouri, fly around the world, drop a couple of Moabs down a pickle barrel, and have them refuel 5 or 6 times and do a 48-hour mission, then I say, well, damn, man, I just consider that a training exercise. And see, the thing about this is a lot of people saying is 32 of his Cuban guards went home in bags. Those 32 Cubans are going to stop a lot of other people going home in bags, because people go home in bags when people think they can get away with things. That's why crime happens. Crime happens because people think they can get away with it. When the law is enforced rigorously and punished fairly but immediately and severely, you don't have so much crime. And the raid on Venezuela has enormously, and I mean enormously, increased the safety of American citizens, because regimes who might have thought about, nobody's thinking about seriously about invading this country, but regimes that might have thought about either terror attacks inside the country or terror attacks against Americans otherwise, now know that the United States is not only capable but willing to simply go in there and simply excise them from the planet. I think it's great. We're talking about the whole Star Trek thing in the beginning. The difference between Star Trek, the original series, and the current Starfleet Academy is the original series believed in the Federation. And Kirk believed in the Federation, thought it was worth fighting and dying for. The current group of Starfleet cadets and commandants don't, because if they did, they would take it seriously. They wouldn't bring in, criminals who get if they attend Starfleet Academy, then they get a break on their sentencing. So, there it is. Let's see, Haytak saying Afghanistan was 40% Buddhist in 1900, Iran was 20% Sunni, 30% Shia, 20% Christian, and the rest was Zoroastrian in 1900. So that's 50% Zoroastrians. So my thoughts on it are, yes, let's knock them off. Let's knock them off, and no boots. And I don't know what the number is. I've heard up to 12,000 maybe Iranians killed, murdered by their own regime. Those people have to go, man. They have to go. And I'd love to see Iran not only come back to the family of nations, I'd like to see them come back to the family of nations as Persians rather than as yet another Islamic republic that enforces that kind of brutality on their own people. I care about this. I care about real citizens. I care about the real citizens of Iran. It matters to me. But the well-being of American citizens matters to me more, which goes back to something that's the most important distinction between liberals and conservatives. I don't have the file anymore. I had it on my desk. I mentioned it a month or two ago. A heat map is where you plot something and you plot the strength of something. So here's your opinion on a scale of 1 to 10, and so on. And when you do a concentric ring of concern, with you at the center, your wife, or husband, your spouse, and your children in the next circle, then your parents, grandparents, cousins in the next circle, and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You get to people in my state, people in my country, people on the planet, and so on, so on, so on. What you find is conservative heat maps are all focused at the center. We care more about our family, and when you get to the outer circle of this thing that was done recently, it included potential alien life on other planets throughout all of the galaxies. And liberals care more about that stuff than they do about their children, as a generalization of how the heat maps break out. And that's insane. It's insane. So, there we go. Guy Balo, here's an update on Victor David Hansen's health, praying that he makes a full recovery. His wisdom and insight is greatly needed and appreciated. Here's the next post. Let me see what he got. Had an operation on 12/30 to remove a large mucinous adenoma, carcinoma, and also right lower lobe by the thoracic surgery team at Stanford Medical. It's not a bad place to be operated on, I would imagine. I think a lot of this is about oh, okay, so this is from Hansen. He's talking about his background, with this particular illness. He says he's recovering well from the lung cancer surgery, but now mostly dealing with the after effects of the long time under anesthesia for the 2 procedures, blood loss, anemia, and some AFib, which are all mostly manifested in fatigue and weakness. So, better to be fatigued and weak because you can recover from those things. He says, but it happens. He's 72. Sometimes an arterial bleed of unknown origins developed in the recovery room. I was very lucky that the team got me back into surgery, found the hemorrhaging, provided numerous transfusions, got me back into recovery. There is an awful lot wrong with our healthcare system in this country, and believe me, when Natasha broke her wrist, we got to see the worst of it. But I will tell you this: it is expensive, cumbersome, filled with insane complexities, fraud, and all the rest. However, if you are hurt or badly injured or critically ill, there is no better place to be than in the United States of America, and he's getting the best medical care available on the planet. So it sounds very much like serious surgery, obviously, and that his recovery has been extended by complications after the surgery. But he's still with us, and if he's still in the hospital, then we've got real good chance of getting Professor Hansen back, and especially during the Obama administration, he was just a rock for me. I mean, just an absolute rock. So God bless him, and he has all our prayers and thoughts, and I'm a huge admirer of his. I've read every book he wrote, and he's a terrific guy, and I personally feel, just in gut feeling, he's going to make it, and he's going to be just fine. Okay, Steve Young, evening, Bill. America has withdrawn its participation in some 60 UN programs by executive order. No! No! A good start. Question, will America withdraw from the UN altogether? Just saw something over here that said, P7 2017 says he's hearing about the UN trying to isolate the US, and that just strikes me as kind of hilarious. It is time and past time and long, long, long past time for us to say, thanks for all the fish. I mean, you're welcome for all the fish. The UN, and I'm old enough to remember this, in the 1960s, the UN felt like the future. And I'm old enough to remember feeling like it was the future. Like, the civilized world is going to lift up all of these countries and raise them to our standards, and we will deal with the problems of the world as individual nations, but we'll deal with them rationally and effectively and efficiently and with strength and so on. And all that's happened is it has pulled the civilized countries down to the level of Iran and Venezuela and Somalia and all the rest of it. It's time to go. It's been way past time to go. The UN without the United States in it is like Casablanca without Humphrey Bogart, without the character, not just the actor. Parenthetically, I don't know where I heard it. I might have heard it here. I don't remember where I heard it, but I did hear, parenthetically, that not too long ago, just before Christmas, some TV network ran It's a Wonderful Life, but they had to cut it for time. And so what they cut was they cut out Porterville, Potterville. Sorry, they just cut that whole thing. From the moment that was that Amazon Prime, yeah, from the moment that George Bailey walks into Potterville and sees the strip clubs and all the neon signs and all of that, to the moment he walks out, they cut that because they needed to shorten the runtime. The reason they cut it was because it is such a damning condemnation of the left's morality that they couldn't bear to run it. But anyway, that's that. 2 to go. Braden Higby, howdy from Idaho. Hello, Idaho, my favorite place. Another election year, another round of leftist riots, though I'm surprised by how early they are and how persistent despite the inclement weather. Do you think Trump will actually invoke the Insurrection Act? Do you think Waltz will try to do anything about it? I don't expect him to much more than cry on camera, but these things seem to start with the mess calculation. Yeah, I think we're actually pretty close to it. And I think Waltz walked it back when he had a backhanded kind of, well, we still have to, resist to the death, but we really need to turn down the temperature. It's, for Waltz, this shooting was a godsend because it took some of the spotlight off of the Somali fraud thing. He's already said he's not going to run again. I don't care. I want him in jail for a number of reasons. When that woman got shot, Ms. Good, it's the most telling thing about liberals that I've seen. Now, it's not as much of a surprise for me because, get your bingo cards out, I watch these body cam videos all the time. And one of the things that's consistent throughout these police body cam videos is liberal white women being astonished that somebody was actually going to enforce their will over them. Not they start out angry. Well, actually they start out astonished, then they become angry when they realize they're in the back of the car. But they are astonished. They're genuinely astonished. And when you see a car go through a line of protesters, what you can hear all the protesters saying is, "Are you kidding me? Oh my God, oh my God." Like, they can't believe it. The wife of this woman who tried to run over that ICE agent, the first thing she said was, and you can hear her on this, she screamed out, "I can't believe that they used real bullets." That's how disconnected they are from consequences. They couldn't believe that's such a precise delusion. It's not that she said, "I can't believe they shot at her." She said, "I can't believe that they had real bullets." What did she think they had? This is how disconnected from reality and consequences these people are. And when I first saw it, I couldn't make any sense out of it. I knew that somebody was gunning a car, couldn't really see anything. But when I saw the stuff from the officer's body cam, it's clear to me. Look, it doesn't matter. You can analyze the angle of the wheel or whatever the case may be. When she was repeatedly given lawful orders to stop, not get back in the car, she gets in the car. They're constantly saying, "Do not get in the car." You ordered out of the car, and she gets in the car and guns that engine. That's it, man. And it really is FAFO, and they don't understand. FAFO is just short code for reality. We'll just say fool around and find out is how the universe works. That's the essence of how the universe works. There are consequences that cannot be rhetorically argued with. You can't argue your way out of gravity. You can't argue your way out of physics. And so reality is constructed in such a way, and you can, through the power of rhetoric and imagination and wishful thinking and all the rest, create a little universe of your own that has its own internal rules in it. And as long as you surround yourself with other people that have those same internal rules, it will hold up for a while, which is really why they cannot have any conservative voice that says why they have to do this, because the only way they can maintain this bubble is if everybody agrees with it. But sooner or later, they have to go outdoors. And when they do that, then they have to come in contact with reality. And when I hear these left-wingers saying this is actual civil war, we need to go out there and start getting weapons and start gunning down these conservatives before they turn us into a Nazi nation. I just realize how the best thing I ever heard about this, it was just my favorite quote ever, and it goes back a long way, at least 10 years. But somebody once said, if there ever was a civil war, like a serious shooting war between the left and the right, he said most of us wouldn't even have a chance to reload. And I thought, yeah. So, I don't know what to say other than I can't believe they were using real bullets. I believe you. Ma'am, I believe that you can't believe that that somebody hit you back. Crispy Mofo says she never got out of the car. Yes, her wife did, but she was told to get out of the car. Right, that's what it was. But she was given clear orders, and and then the wife said, "Oh my God, I've killed her. I talked her into coming down here." You did kill her. You talked her into coming down here, and I'm sure the whole time you said we're just going to block these guys, and they're going to make threats, but no one's ever going to stand up to it, because from the time those women were born, they had temper tantrums, and every time they had a temper tantrum, people gave them what they wanted, and that's what they learned. That's what their model of reality was. And these are the same kind of people that would get down on the floor in Walmart and kick and scream when they're 4 years old and scream and cry until they got the toy. They never learned that the world doesn't necessarily work that way. They stayed inside that bubble, and then one day, there you go. Lady Hawk says the wife said, "Drive, baby, drive," and she did. Okay, well, there you go. It seems clear to me. Crispy Mofo says, "Get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the effing car." Yeah, all right. So all of that, but even then, even if it turned out that she was trying to avoid them, this business of taking a split-second decision on the part of law enforcement and analyzing it for days and weeks about whether somebody should have done something in a tenth of a second is nuts. I give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt in those cases, because I think I took one or two lessons. I mean, obviously I've had a lot of gun training time, and spent a significant, not a lot of time on the range, especially compared to some of you guys, but I have a basic idea of what I'm doing there. But I've had a couple of different sessions, where guys were teaching me things about, being a little more, proficient with drawing and all the rest of the stuff, drawing the weapon. And the guy said to me, "So what is it you want to get out of this?" And I said, "What I'd really like to achieve is I'd like to achieve the ability to not blow my own foot off while drawing a gun while adrenalized. That's my main purpose for being here." I thought that was a pretty realistic take on what the actual experience is like. James O'Keefe and I, and one other woman whose name escapes me, went down to one of these simulation places where you have real weapons that have actual kick, and they're shooting a laser beam, and there's this giant cyclorama, and they're projecting video, and there's somebody sitting back there. You have to wear these things, and if you get hit, you get yourself a shock. You have a pretty good shock, like a pretty good shock. So they're just training scenarios. And my favorite part of that was we stepped into this, and I was with this young woman, this black woman, And we both had our weapons, and there's like this, and there's a hallway, and I basically said, all right, you cover the right, and I'll cover the left, and we'll just go forward that way, right? And it was so good to have to not try to cover 270 degrees of arc. It's like, this is my responsibility. If somebody comes around that corner, I don't have to take my eyes off of this because she's going to take care of it, and she did. It was fun. So even then, training is training, and you can't possibly be as adrenalized in training as you would be in the streets. Back when the George Floyd thing happened, or somewhere around there, some of these social justice political leaders, Black Lives Matter leaders and stuff, were given a chance to undergo the same kind of training that the police officers go through, which they do for real. They do out in the street where the guns have blanks, and instead of it being in a screen, they've got an actual guy, and he walks up, and or they're doing a traffic check or whatever the case may be, and sometimes the guy just hands over a driver's license, sometimes he turns around with a pistol and shoots you. And those left-wingers who went through that training openly said, we have to rethink the way that we think about the police, because any number of times they were just shot dead because police are too quick on the draw. Sometimes they're not quick enough. So there's that. Okay, last one for the night. Tonight, the case of the Rubicon Roll. So, Bill, I got to say the reschedule to Friday kind of strikes me as a bit of divine providence, because as this week draws to a close, we see three major elements of Trump's foreign policy coming to a head. Trump announced he's gotten the Ayatollah to back off from his threat to hang key protesters currently in prison. That's good. SCOTUS is apparently very close to ruling on the tariff issue, which the White House is very confident will be in Trump's favor. That's good. The U.S. and the Greenland leadership have both expressed that they've made significant progress, which they both seem vague about. Oh, that's cool. It would seem, Bill, the die is cast and the Rubicon is crossed. Next week we may see three major victories or, God forbid, a disaster. So how do you see the dice ending up? I think the tariffs are going to go our way, and so that is essentially our policy already, and so I don't see a big change on that. I don't think we should be talking to the Ayatollahs. I think the time for talking to the Ayatollahs is over. I'm hoping, and I also expect that what Trump is doing is he's trying to get those hostages and those prisoners out of there, because if he goes after them to take them out, the first thing they're going to do is shoot the prisoners. And if that's the strategy, then I'm 100% behind it. I can wait weeks, months if we have to, get those people out of there, and then decapitate that regime. But I don't think you let an opportunity like this pass. So we talked about this in some detail earlier. No boots on the ground, but let's just get rid of this cancer that's been, metastasizing for all these years. And as far as the last one goes, it's funny. I had not given Greenland a second thought ever before Trump announced it. Was it right after his election, I want to say, before he was inaugurated? And the more I think about it, the more I want Greenland. I have been aware that that the Soviets, the Russians rather, and the Chinese, but especially the Russians, have been putting a lot of military power into the Arctic, and that is a genuine threat to the West. But the main reason is not even the things that Greenland has. It is, we have any young kids watching? Pretty soon I'm going to be 67. 67 years old. I've been pushing 67 for 6 or 7 years now. But during my lifetime, the United States has not grown. I mean, exactly to my lifetime, because I was born in 59, and the last time the United States got bigger was 1959. We got Alaska and Hawaii. And I'd like more stars on the flag. I think if Greenland were to, if a moral deal, if Moral deal to me is easy. By the way, I don't know if you heard about this, but the Danish government apparently sterilized half of the women in Greenland, intentionally sterilized them, because they don't want the Greenland population getting big enough to get restive. That government can go to hell. If it turned out that we were able to make an agreement that was voted on by the people who lived in Greenland, if the people who lived in Greenland said, yes, we decided we want to do this, we could make every one of them multimillionaires. It'd still be a bargain, like 50,000 of them or something. Then I think it'd be nice if Greenland came in as, 6 different states, something like that. I don't see any reason. I know the population is so small, but I don't see why. No, I guess it'd kind of have to come in as one state anyway. I just don't know what a 51 state flag would look like. Yeah, the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap for us boomers, cold warriors, says Jen Knudsen. I know that story pretty well. I had always, by the way, Jen, I'd always wondered about the SOSUS line is a line of underwater sensors that during the Cold War, if Soviet subs had, if they're going to get to the convoy routes between North America and Europe, they have to come up and down. They have to come out of the Baltic and come down into the Atlantic. And there's only, well, you go through the English Channel, that's not likely. So you either go between, and you can't really go between Britain and Ireland. But that means you have to go through between either Ireland and Iceland or Iceland and Greenland. And those lines were where we put a line of underwater sensors called the SOSUS line, SOSUS sensors. And these underwater listening stations, hydrophones, allowed us to hear anything that crossed that line. We knew anything that crossed that line, on the surface or below. When I was doing the research on the Cold War, I've come to learn that the United States now essentially has that capability across the entire planet. That we are, that we have sonar nets that can track anything anywhere, which makes me happy. I used to think, Medius Rock says, Republicans are saying there's enough vote to impeach Trump if he moves forward on Greenland. They're pissed. Well, if he invades Greenland, that's a different story. If he makes them a deal they can't offer, they can't refuse, then there you go. I'd always wondered what they were, and I'd always thought that the sensors were maybe like the size of an office desk or something. But I finally saw a picture of one, and these things are they're just massive. They're like 30 foot by 30 foot metal frame grids, and they just sit on the bottom of the ocean. And there we go. One of the things that I didn't talk about in the Cold War, and I wish I had, was it Operation Silver Bells, I think? I didn't know about it until after it was over. Or something bells. No, what is it? It's not Silver Bells. It's Operation. Hang on. Ivy Bells. Operation Ivy Bells. A lot of Soviet communications went through encrypted underwater cables, and the Soviets thought, well, once the cables get deep enough, there's no way the Americans could get to them. Turns out we could. And it was the halibut again, the frickin' halibut, which, yep, that boat has earned itself a lot of debt. The halibut was part of Operation Ivy Bells, and the halibut was also instrumental in Operation Azorian when we raised the Soviet sub from the bottom of the ocean. The halibut was one of, I think, want to say two or three subs that were designed to launch the Regulus missile. And the Regulus missile was essentially a huge cruise missile. It's like launching a Cessna 150 off the deck. It was the first missile launched off a submarine, and in order to do it, the submarine had to surface, and they had to crank this thing out of a hangar, and then they had to crank it up on a launch rail, at an angled launch rail. Off the thing goes, down goes the launch rail. They bring another one out, bring that up, off it goes. And this thing lasted for, by the time they'd really gotten the boats in the water, they were obsolete with vertically launched missiles coming out of the back of, like, was it Ethan Allen, first class, I guess, of ballistic missile subs. But what they found was, since they'd had to build this enormous bulge on, it looks an awful lot like a Nautilus, basically like a Nautilus class. Since they had to build these boats with this giant hangar, once they got rid of the Regulus missiles, they had a sub that had this huge three deck hole in it, and that became incredibly useful. The guys on Azorian called it the Bat Cave, and they had computers in there, and they had all kinds of stuff. Hey, look at that! What happened to Halibut? I bet it's scrapped. Not SSGN. Yeah, it's a guided missile because of the Regulus. Built at Mare Island. That's where they also built the stuff. What happened to Halibut? Let's see. Special operations missions. What a cool sub. Final disposition, Halibut was decommissioned on 30th June 1976. She was mothballed at Keyport, Bangor Triton Base in Washington. Struck the Naval Register April 30th, 1986, and disposed of through the Ship Submarine Recycling Program at Puget Sound, which means she was scrapped. She should have been a museum ship. Here's to you, Halibut. I have not actually read Blind Man's Bluff, but I do know quite a bit about sub warfare, mostly from simulations and stuff that were based on Blind Man's Bluff. That was quite a boat. Yep, just that one hump, man, that hangar, the Bat Cave, it just came in so bloody useful to have a big open space in a nuclear-powered submarine. All right, Halibut. Well, rest in peace. Maybe I've been shaving with Halibut. You never know. So, anyway, that's that. And, so we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting year. But they're all interesting years, it seems to me. Okay, well, guess what? That'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks for putting up with the postponement till Friday. You probably know by now the show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, and been continuing to do the basics on the colonies, working on that night and day, and doing it the smart way rather than just jumping in. Oh, here's some cool footage that we can't use ever. No, we're getting this thing done from the ground up. We're inventing production pipelines as we go. They're just being invented. On Monday, I'll tell you about this process of rigging AI hard surface objects like robots and stuff. We'll see. Gumman says, "How's the bunny? Little Bunky's doing fine. That little tiny little rabbit is just, you put a handful of salad in front of that thing and it just vacuums it up. They're cool little animals, rabbits. They're not my. I mean, if I had a choice, I'd probably take a cat. And when I was a young guy, as a boy, I had dogs. All boys should have dogs. All boys should have dogs. But because they don't make any noise, they don't make any sounds at all. They just hop around and are cute and fun to pet and stuff, and they don't seem to stress much over being in their little area. And I let them out for in the when Natasha spends a lot of time with him in the daytime, and he just hops around. He's happy as can be. He's a happy rabbit, I'll tell you that. So, anyway, yeah, everybody's commenting on shaving. I tried to grow a mustache once when I was 20 or 21 or something. I looked like I just look like a communist agitator. Never again. My friend Fritz, on the other hand, this guy could grow a Viking beard in 3 days, and it's just the way it is. But anyway, Bunky's doing fine. Everybody else is doing fine, and I hope you're doing fine too. So thanks very much for joining us, and we will see you guys on Monday. I'm sure we'll have something to show, something fun, on your Stratosphere Studio. There it is. See you, YouTube.